Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. Now, before we get into it, I'd just like to inform you about a new website selling quality current and retro Spurs jerseys, okjersey.com. They sell all current and retro Tottenham Hotspur shirts in all sizes. They sell the current fan and player versions, as well as the 80s and 90s retro shirts, including my very favourite, the 1991 FA Cup final shirt. You can order very easily from okjersey.com, and if you use the code Chris, you will receive an 8% discount off your final order. You can also use the QR code on the top left of your screen. And by the way, they also have some training wear here and the 25-26 colour special edition jersey. Hi everyone, I hope everyone is well. Now, of course, this is another edition of the Fan Show where I'll be talking to a number of Spurs fans from all around the world. We have a lot to discuss. Now, we're live on YouTube, live on X and Facebook. Let us know in the comments right now how you are feeling after today. Another defeat at home. Tottenham Hotspur 1, West Ham United 2. Boos at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium again. Boos at half-time. Louder boos for Thomas Frank and this Tottenham Hotspur team at full-time. Spurs remain 14th in the Premier League table, 8 points away from the top 5, 5 points above 17th, where we finished under former boss Ange Postecoglou last season. That is now 8 defeats in the last 14 games, and Spurs have only won 4 of their last 25 home Premier League games. Now, Thomas Frank said, "I feel the trust from everyone." He's also said it's emotional, it is tough. And I've no doubt that the fans coming on today will talk about Vinay's message that he has sent to the fans via the matchday programme pre-match West Ham United. Of course, we can talk about the transfer window. New left-back, Sousa, who hasn't been officially announced yet. He was at the game today against West Ham. Conor Gallagher, of course, made his debut against West Ham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And Basuma is back in Thomas Frank's squad playing the second 45 minutes of the game against West Ham. But basically, every fan that comes on here today can talk about whatever they want to talk about. And if you'd like to get involved, if you'd like to appear on this show today or a future show, please just send me an email, tottenhamfanchris@gmail.com, and it would be great to talk to you. I can either ask you some questions or you can come on and talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to go straight to Canada to talk to our first guest, and we're going to have Pat with us. Pat, haven't spoke to you in a while. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me on. I've been better.
Yeah, haven't we all? Pat, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, things are pretty grim, I got to say. I'm not surprised by the performances at this point, just because it's been the same since, November. I barely even watch the first halves of the game now because we seem to be a second half team. We kind of drop all our marbles and start picking them up again around the 55th minute or whatever. But we're always just scrambling to try to get something from a game. It's it's sad to watch.
Pat, how are you feeling about Thomas Frank? How can he turn this around? Because when you have boos at most of the games now, and most boos are now particularly aimed just at him, how can he turn this around? How can he carry on in this job? Because he obviously feels the trust. This isn't the first time he said it. He obviously feels the trust from the board. Vinay has put this message out as well. But how do you feel as a Tottenham fan about our manager right now?
Yeah, it's tough to say because today, his post-match where he just said, we're at the cusp of turning something around and there just needs to be fine tweaks. I feel like he's just saying the same thing differently. And he's been saying this since October. You can say, okay, first month, mixed results, we'll deal with it. Second month, mixed results. But if you're not consistently seeing something, then I think, we got to start to worry. We've got a big club. We've got a passionate fan base. And I think, you posted the head-to-head, going into the new year of Ange's stats versus Frank's stats. And we had conceded only 4 more goals under Ange last year, but we were 1 place ahead and we had scored 16 more goals. So, I feel like the hardest thing to do is sort out your attack. And he went for the low-hanging fruit and tried to sort out our defense. And we managed to keep some clean sheets, but in 0-0 draws and also clean sheets early in the season. Now we're not doing any of that. We're conceding goals. We're not attacking. So it seems pretty hopeless. I think I wouldn't be like, I'm obviously like okay with Frank leaving, because at this point anybody would be better than him, or could at least get the exact same results. So I think if the board want to really kickstart their post Levy era, they're talking about changes in wage structure and investing more money, buying some players. This is their first official window without Daniel Levy, like, pulling the strings and tightening the purse strings and blah, blah, blah. I think if they want to actually, show some grit and be brave, then I think it's time for a change. Yeah. Paratici didn't even want him here, and now he's gone.
Pat, how are you feeling about the Tottenham Hotspur squad overall?
I mean, it's tough because we've got some good players. We're injury prone. Kulusevski and Solanke, like when Solanke's like fit, he's going to feel like a new signing. It's really hard to judge the players right now, because maybe they're not playing for the manager right now. So there could be, like, they're lacking quality. There's no doubt about that. We obviously need to increase, like, we need to add to the quality, but I've seen Odegaard do really well. I've seen Tell start to do well. Moani, I'm really disappointed in. He's been dispossessed and playing lazy balls too many times in the new year. Like, we saw him in November and the beginning of December. We saw him start to shine a bit, like post PSG, and I thought like something was going to change and he was going to do well, and he's completely dropped off. So I am worried about the overall attitude in the dressing room. I'm not sold that we are we deserve to be 14th place based on the actual quality of the squad. I think we can do much better, but we do have to add. We have to add players in a big way. Feel bad for Conor Gallagher. Honestly, it's not a great way to come play your first game with a Spurs jersey.
Pat, have your expectations changed from the start of the season to now? And what would be a successful season for you as a Spurs fan right now? At the end of the year, we finish in, X spot. Where does it need to be?
Now, I mean, like, we're still not, like, crazy enough. Like, a lot of teams are still dropping points, and like, it's the Premier League. It seems to me to be like one of the hardest seasons in terms of just like the gap between the European spots and like the bottom of the table or lower mid. So I would like to see. It would be nice to snag that Europa or Conference League spot if we could. It would require probably 3 new signings, and we've only got 14 days left. But yeah, I think that's all we can get from it. Get as much money as we can from Champions League, and try to get the worst European tournament we can get.
Do you think you are a balanced and a patient Tottenham Hotspur fan?
I'm definitely less reactive than a lot of the fans that I see on the internet. I was not for sacking Ange. I think Ange did a lot more with a lot less. With Gallagher's signing, we've now spent over 200 million backing Thomas Frank. And Thomas Frank said that he sanctioned all these deals at the end of the day. Like, maybe the club's making the deals, but he's still sanctioning the signings, saying that he can do something with them. And we're not short on attack. I know we don't have Decky right now and Solanke, and we just lost Richie, but we still have attackers. Like, Ange didn't even have a striker last year until, like, he had Dom Solanke, then lost a striker. We didn't even have Richarlison. Like, now we still technically have 2 strikers, Moani and Tell. And, there's no signs that we're sorting out our attack. Like, from a balanced point of view, I just don't think Frank was a good appointment. I think that was just a step backwards. I think we should have kept Ange. I wasn't reactive to the 17th place. I trust Ange in saying that he prioritized getting Champions League football and winning a trophy for the club. And I think it was crazy to not throw 220 million at him. Like, we threw a bunch of youngsters and Dom Solanke at him. That was his transfer window. So, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if we had some consistency, but I think the board, or at least the Lewis family, are probably taking notes now. So hopefully we'll see some change.
Pat, lastly, what did you make of Vinay's message overall?
Yeah. The only thing that I'm going to say is, the only thing I'll speak to is the wage structure thing. I like the fact that he's willing to shell out more. We've got a cap at what, 220,000 a week, 200,000 a week. I don't even know, somewhere around there. And we're not going to attract big players because somebody else is like Newcastle, Man U, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal. They're all going to be able to offer more for bigger and better players. So if we change our wage structure, yes, technically we'll be able to attract bigger players and better players, but we need to get results. So if we're in Conference League next year, we're still just going to be chasing our tails because all the Champions League teams that can afford to pay $300K a week, $250 a week for the Mbumos or the Ezes or whatever, and like Crystal Palace's captain just went from $50K a week to $300. Like we're not going to be able to offer that. And so I think it's going to still be a couple windows before we can get big players to trust that we're a competitive team. We brought Frank in to manage 4 competitions. We were in more competitions this time last year.
Yeah. Pat, anything else you want to add?
No. All I can say, yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope things change.
Absolutely. Nice to talk to you again. Speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Cheers.
We'll see you.
Right, we're now going to go to Darren, all the way in USA. Darren, how are you?
Good, Chris. How you doing?
Yeah, I've been better. I tell you, I cannot believe we are here again. Another defeat. 4 wins in our last 25 home Premier League games. It is just a dismal record. And every single time that I go to the Tottenham Stadium now, it just seems to be that, it is standard that the fans are now booing Thomas Frank. These sets of this set of players. It's depressing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wanted to say, Chris, that I consider myself a patient fan. I didn't want to get rid of Ange either, and up until this very minute, I didn't want to get rid of Frank because my concern has always been, we're not Chelsea under Roman Abramovich. We've seen this managerial merry-go-round many times, and I'm not convinced that if we bring anyone else in, they're going to do any different. The expectation is so high that unless a manager comes in and has like instant success, we're going to be in the same spot. Having said that, the problem now, as you just were pointing out, is that we are in such a negative spiral, and it seems to like feed on itself, and it's just going to get worse and worse and more negative and more boos. And at some point you've got to say, well, we've got to hit the reset button, and unfortunately the manager is the one who's going to get it. But even I'm starting to be of the opinion, well, what choice do we have? We've got to like hit the ejector seat and get him out and try and build some momentum all over again. And the other disappointing thing was I was kind of excited about the Conor Gallagher signing. It's not like amazing, but it's positive, it's good. But all that positivity is gone now because of this result. If we'd have brought Conor Gallagher in and then got a decent win on a solid performance, we'd be saying probably completely different things. But here we are.
Checkmate 7345 writes here, stop the negativity, Frank in, trust the process. I tell you what, I'd be very, very interested to see if Checkmate 7345 will come on the show this evening, talk to us, come on here, email me, tottenhamfanchris@gmail.com, and I'll send you the link to come on, because I'd be very, very interested to hear from any pro Thomas Frank fans right now, because I feel like I am a very balanced fan and normally very, very positive about things. I'm struggling with Thomas Frank. I really, really am struggling right now, because we have to see positive signs week by week. And let's face it and be very, very honest and frank about it. We have just lost to a very, very poor West Ham United side, who only a couple of weeks ago got absolutely battered at Molineux 3-0. It could have been a lot more. This is a dismal side, and we have just got beaten by West Ham. We faced Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday in the Champions League. I tell you what, at the moment, I'm sitting here fearing for that game. Even Burnley away, which some would say these fixtures look easy on paper. I tell you what, Darren, there's no easy games at the moment, is there?
Well, I think Burnley drew with Liverpool, didn't they? And obviously Liverpool got their own struggles. But I think I am one of those people that say there are no easy games, and I don't. We're not going to batter teams 3-4, 5-0 every week. That's just even Arsenal isn't doing that. But I think this is a game that we should, especially at home, that we should have expected to go in and be very positive and very aggressive, very attacking, and we should have expected to get a result. And the worrying thing for me is we sort of look like a team, like a sort of relegation team. We look very timid. We look low on confidence, and there's just this air of inevitability. And I think the fans sense that and kind of feed off of it. This air of inevitability. It's not going to go our way. And I don't know what the problem is, because I'm sure Thomas Frank on the training ground is not saying, okay, boys, whatever you do, make sure you give the pass away cheaply, a simple 5-yard pass, or, just hammer it upfield and hope for the best. I'm sure he's working on stuff, but it's not translating. There's no cohesion. There's no confidence. They don't look like they've ever played together. I don't know what the solution is. And like I said, you can bring in another manager, but I'm not convinced Pep Guardiola could come in here and do a number right now. I'm really not. I don't know I don't know what to do. I'm just lost for words. Like, where do we go from here?
TalkSport have just stated that Thomas Frank's future at Tottenham Hotspur is now hanging in the balance. Boardroom discussions are taking place as to whether his position is becoming untenable. How do you see this panning out, Darren?
Well, I mean, again, to talk about that air of inevitability, I forget the Borussia Dortmund game, because I think, did you say that they're unbeaten they've lost once? Is it in the Bundesliga?
Once, yeah.
They're potentially gonna batter us. So I forget about Champions League. In fact, forget about the season. It's done. But if we go to Burnley and it's another sort of abject performance, and even if we get a draw or something like that, this negative momentum is just going to build, and it doesn't go away. Even if we were to go to Burnley and sort of comfortably beat them 3-0, I don't know that changes a whole lot, because the following week, whomever we play, and we've got a tough set of fixtures coming up, we could be facing another loss, and we're kind of back where we were. So it's really tough, unless by some grace of God Tottenham pulls out like a 4 or 5 win streak in a row. I mean, I think the end is near for Frank. And like I said, I'm one of those people that's like, give him time. But even I've got to say, this is not working out. This has gone very sour very quickly.
There's a lot of updates right now as we are live on this show. The Independent have just stated there are figures on the Tottenham Hotspur board who want to give Thomas Frank the Borussia Dortmund game on Tuesday. Darren, with the Tottenham Hotspur squad, we know that there are a lot of improvements to make. Is this the case where we all need to be calm? Do we need to be patient with Thomas Frank and the football club? Or is it best, if Spurs want any chance of getting a European place this season, do they have to cut ties with Thomas Frank now?
I mean, the problem is, I think Thomas Frank is a sort of a slow burn manager. We've seen this. You go back to his Brentford days, and granted, Brentford obviously different stature, different expectations, but he got them into the Premier League, and then the goal was to keep him there. He made him solid. They weren't playing amazing football, but they did the job. But then you noticed the progression over several seasons. They were getting better and better. Then they got more solid in possession, and then by the time he left the club, they were a pretty decent side, one that you would be reluctant to face. But unfortunately, for a club like Tottenham, you are not going to get multiple seasons. You maybe get 2 if you're absolutely lucky, and that's where we're at. As far as the squad goes, and that's another problem for Frank or any manager that comes in. I think we've got a decent squad, but we've got a lot of youngsters in there. and I worry that we're going to lose that talent. I think people like Odebear and Tell get a lot of criticism, but they are young and they have that energy and that enthusiasm, and I think they can bring something to the team. But I see them as sort of impact subs or something like that rather than being starters at the moment. But we're kind of forced to play them as starters, and they're just a little bit rough and raw. They're just not quite ready for it yet, and that's going to be a problem, I think.
Darren, just a quick yes or no. I know you're based in the States where we're talking to you. TalkSport have just stated here it's understood that Mauricio Pochettino would be open to a return to Tottenham after leading the USA at this summer's World Cup. Would you like to see Pochettino back, yes or no?
Oh God. I'm going to say no, honestly. If you're going to restrict me to a yes or no, I've got to say no. I mean, I can go into more detail, but...
Go on.
I'll just say I don't like the idea of going back. It's a bit, and I think you brought this up on the show numerous times. It's a bit like an ex. It's a bit like getting back together with an ex, right? That's the way I think about it. And I don't, in our minds, it's going to be all, amazing and historic and beautiful, but I'm not sure if it will be, and I worry that it won't.
Darren, anything else to add?
I don't know what to say. Like I want to be positive and optimistic, but it is terribly difficult right now. All I can say is I hope the players can come together and sort of build some momentum, because we need some positivity back.
Absolutely. Darren, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, Chris. Thank you.
Cheers. We're now going to go to Tony. Tony, evening. How are you?
Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Sad times. Sad times.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm completely dejected. I had great expectations for Thomas Frank, and from what I see on the pitch, you just don't see where it's going. And like, I'm living in Ireland. I'm going over on Tuesday to the Borussia Dortmund game, and I'm dreading it. I just spending all that money going over and then coming home deflated because I just don't see us getting a result against Dortmund.
What positives would you take from this season, if any, and particularly if you had to compare Ange Postecoglou, because Thomas Frank has kept saying to us, we finished 17th last season. Don't forget we finished 17th. He said that there's a number of times, but what improvements? Because like I say on these shows week in, week out, that if we see improvements, then of course Spurs fans will be happy. And if we do lose games, of course we accept that. Transfer windows need to be different, time and patience to get the playing style in order, etc., etc. But what do you make of the playing style? Because I tell you what, if I ask myself when was the last time I was truly entertained as a Spurs fan, I'm struggling.
Like, I've had this conversation with my father, who's a Spurs fan as well. And, at least with Ange, even when we got beaten, the games were entertaining, and whether we won or lost, you didn't come away going, oh, that was kind of, I didn't get value for money. Even when we lost, there was fight in the team. There was games that we could have won. The one that stands out to me as the most ridiculous game I've ever watched was the Chelsea game when we had the two players sent off. And even at that, the players were applauded off the pitch. And there was many times when we lost under Ange when the players were applauded. But with Thomas Frank, I just don't see the fight in the players, apart from the second half against Villa, where we actually looked like a team and Paulinho looked like one of the best players we've ever seen in a Tottenham shirt. But after watching the game today, I just don't see how there's any comeback for him. And there's been many other incidents, the Arsenal coffee cup thing. There's just been too many things that have led up, and I don't see how the board keep him on. I just don't see it.
The Independent have just put out another update. Tottenham are considering whether to keep Thomas Frank in charge any longer. They wanted to give him at least the chance of working through better conditions. Tony, how are you feeling about the transfer window so far? Of course, Conor Gallagher has come in. Sousa is meant to be coming through the door, and the official announcement will be very, very soon. How does he turn this around? Because we mentioned about him being booed, a number of games now. But the Spurs fans, particularly the South Stand today, were singing "You're going to get sacked in the morning," and this was like minutes before the final whistle.
Yeah, it's not a good sign. And to be honest, I don't think there is any turning it around. I just think the fans are so on his back, and now with the way the players have been playing, and it just doesn't look like we can get a full 90 minutes out of them. And I don't know whether that's on Thomas Frank or that's the way the players are, but it just seems there's no way back. And the transfer window, like Conor Gallagher was a player we were crying out for 2 years ago. And while, yes, it's great to have him in the squad, he's not what we really need at the moment. Obviously, with the injuries to Bentancur and, Bergvall just kind of coming back, but we're not scoring goals. And with Thomas Frank, we were supposed to fix the defence, and now we're shipping goals again. Like under Ange, we'd scored more goals at this point in the season. I know we'd pretty much in the exact same position, but unless he signs Jude Bellingham and Vinicius Jr., that's the only way the transfer window is going to be saved. That's not going to happen. And the worst thing is, if we sack Thomas Frank, where do we go? I mean, do we try and approach Oliver Glasner from Crystal Palace and try and get him out before the end of the season? I don't think it's going to make any difference. Do we go all out and try and get Xavi Alonso? But is Xavi Alonso going to come and manage Spurs? I don't see where we go. Like, we're in a lose-lose situation. We keep Frank, the football is atrocious, and we end up with nothing to show for the season, fighting relegation. But if we sack him, who's going to come? What manager is going to want to come to this shambles of a club at the moment?
Well, since 2019 of moving in that new stadium, we've had 6 permanent managers, 3 interim appointments. Can another one happen in the very near future? The Daily Mail have just stated that Tottenham are now considering a change of manager, but not preparing an imminent announcement. As it stands, the plan is for Thomas Frank to take charge of the Borussia Dortmund game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Tuesday evening. Beyond that, there is now uncertainty over how long he will be given to turn things around. What positives do you see in Thomas Frank, if any, Tony? Because the corner stats, us scoring from corners is certainly a lot better. Defensively, at the start of the season, I thought we were a lot better. But when you look at some of the recent games, you do wonder whether there have been vast improvements. Of course, the quality difference of forward players that we've had in recent years to now, without trying to really disrespect or name individual players, there's a massive quality difference.
It's staggering, the difference, and a baffling decision. Like, whatever flack that Brennan Johnson has got from fans, he scored goals, and to let Brennan Johnson go, and then obviously, unfortunately, Kudus got the injury more or less straight afterwards. But that should have been the first priority in the window, is to bring in a right winger and someone who can cover it, someone who's going to create and score goals. And it just looks like that's something that is not happening. And I don't see any positives anymore. I've run out of hope with Thomas Frank. And honestly, when he came in, I was like, this is going to be a breath of fresh air and we're going to see a massive change and he's going to be able to adapt to games. But it looks, for all intents and purposes, that Thomas Frank is setting up the team not to lose. And that's not how Tottenham should play. Like, we should be going out to win every game. West Ham shouldn't be, in the first half having the majority possession. We're at home. It's baffling to watch, and even the game against Bournemouth and the game against Aston Villa, it's always the same thing. And when we go behind, I lose hope of us actually getting back into the game, and that's one thing under Ange. I know a lot of times we went behind under Ange, but I always felt that we would come back into the game and get a result. With Thomas Frank, I don't have that feeling. It's just It's just dread. And like when West Ham scored today, I was like, I don't believe it. This is another game we're going to lose. I didn't ever see us getting back into the game.
Tony, anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, he's got to go, unfortunately. As much as I appreciate Thomas Frank as a manager, I just don't see how the board can keep him on after this result.
Thanks for joining us, Tony. We'll talk to you
Cheers,
again soon.
thanks, Chris.
Cheers. Right, we're going to stay in Ireland and we're going to go to Null. Null, good evening. How are you?
Very deflated, Chris.
Yeah.
I was watching your after show today with Craig, and I think I need to apologise to Craig because I was positive after the Crystal Palace game a few weeks ago. You know, when I thought we won ugly, and you know, Craig and myself had a wee bit of a disagreement, but it's all gone downhill since then. And I'm very disappointed. I've never been as deflated, Chris. I got some good news in my life today. I'm actually moving house, and you know the people that agreed to sell a house to me. So that was great news. I was going to go out and celebrate this evening, and then the result comes in. I didn't get it live, but I was watching it on Final Score, and I couldn't believe it. And I watched the highlights afterwards, and you know mistakes again. I don't know. Vicario, my God, you know, there was no danger there. I mean, the man is 6'4". Come out and clear ball, man, the whole lot. He stands there flapping around like somebody on a beach actually, and the ball was a tap in, and we lost to the worst team. We're losing home games to every you've been at them all. But I mean, the teams that we're losing, like we're even lucky to get a point against Wolves. And somebody sent me a text the other day, an Arsenal fan, goading me that saying Arsenal have lost 6 more home games in their stadium since 2006, and Tottenham moved in 2019, and now that's down. That's actually down to 5. So I've never, Chris. I don't know where we're going. I'm just baffled. And when I saw your show afterwards, I don't know how you stood up because the mood was all dejection, and I think this is the lowest point. I've been a lifelong Spurs supporter, Chris. I started in 1967, and we had some great years around that time. A couple of League Cups and UEFA Cup, and then of course came. You won't remember this year. You weren't even born then, but came like 74, 75. We're just lucky to escape. We actually beat Chelsea 2-0 at White Hart Lane, which virtually kept us up. And the last game was against 4-2 against Leeds. That actually kept us up that season. And the second season, 75, 76, was a terrible season as well. But, Terry Neal was the manager, and it was turgid type football, exactly what we're seeing now. Dark days. And then 76, 77 was relegation. I haven't felt as low as since that time, Chris. So that shows you what I'm feeling at the moment. And I would really have loved this to work out for Thomas Frank because he seems a really decent guy. And I watched his after-match interview, and to me he looks like a beaten man. So I thought this time last week, I thought he had 3 games. I thought he had West Ham. I thought was certainly to win that. I wasn't worried too much about the Dortmund game. I wasn't even thinking about that, and I was thinking Burnley away. Now he's lost one of them. The chances are, we get in against a very, very strong Dortmund team. They might put up some type of performance, but Burnley away, if he loses that, Chris, and he mightn't even see it, might even be over by tomorrow. I don't know. You might have a better read on it than I have, but I am very low at the moment. And you know me, as we know each other personally, I'm always a glass half full person, but this result has sucked the life out of me, and that's where I am. So I want you to give me a bit of positivity, Chris, but I can't see it coming.
Do you know, Noel, in my Tottenham supporting life, I've only ever called one manager out and knowing that it was never, ever going to work, and that was Nuno Espirito Santo.
Yeah.
And of course, he come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium today.
Absolutely.
And made West Ham proud. I don't know whether Checkmate 7345 is actually trolling us because he says here, Chris, Tottenham needs stability. Well, of course they do. Of course we need stability. But of course, we also need decent performances, signs, positivity, and most importantly, results. The Tottenham Hotspur fan base need to see positivity in games that we are going forward and we are progressing and we are working towards something. No, give me something. You give me something if you can, right? Because I'm failing to see what we are actually trying to do in these games, because I can't see things getting better. And when I have a lot of positive people, Ricky Norwood is not even on the podcast at the moment because he has nothing positive to say. He's the most positive person I know in my life.
Absolutely, Ricky's class. But on the Crystal Palace one a couple of weeks ago, he was absolutely down in the mouth. Chris, I can't give you any positivities. That's how bad it is. I mean, I always say, you know, we seem to fall behind in every game. I used to bet to I know I'm not a betting man, but I used to say, okay, I'll give you a prediction 2-0. But Spurs always concede, and they always concede in the first half, and then it's an uphill battle in the second half. And I was actually listening to it between final score and on Five Live, and the commentator was saying, that they were, West Ham would be lucky to get out of this, and then suddenly I turned on, I looked at final score, and I could see Shay Given putting his hand to one of the other co-commentators, and they said late goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and I knew that it was bad news. And when I saw the goal afterwards, bloody hell, Chris, this, if we had this was a 6-pointer, you win that game today, and you're virtually relegating West Ham. Now it puts them in a position, that they're actually they're within 4 points of safety, of so-called safety. Now we have 27 points. Can we get sucked into the relegation battle? Very possibly, because the next 3 or 4 games after Burnley, I think there's Man City, Man United, is it Newcastle, Arsenal? Very, very tough games.
Very tough.
I actually 4 weeks ago when we talked, I would have said, give the man a chance. Now I'm struggling to see where it is, Chris. And, this is like a 40-year low for me, and that's a 50-year low. Sorry, a 50-year low. Like going back to those terrible days of between 75 to 77. So I really can't, Chris. That's being honest with you. I'm scratching my head to think of it.
Nikki watching on Facebook here. Thanks for your comment, Nikki. She writes here, I've tried to stay positive about Thomas Frank, but today has done it. He needs to go. Taking Tell off and leaving Mawani on was baffling. I tell you what, I know a lot of people who feel exactly the same as Nikki. I said in one of the shows that I recorded in the last couple of days that a lot of people now who I know, Null, who go regularly home and away, a lot of these people aren't going anymore, and they've given up tickets, or they're passing them on to somebody else. Some of them can't even give them to people, and it's really, really sad. That's how I feel as a Spurs fan. I feel really sad because there are a number of seats empty. For a Tottenham West Ham game, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but to me, Chris, the disappointing thing is, that we're making these bottom teams, look like world beaters. And I always say, if you're not going to win the game, bloody hell, don't lose it. And you lose the game against Bournemouth, and apparently there was a better performance there. And I mean, Callum Wilson, he was standing on the line. He never scored an easier goal in all his life. And I mean, I don't think, did they create anything in the second half? According to the commentator, very, very little. Maybe they had a chance just before it that led to the corner. But, that to me is the disappointing thing, that we're losing to teams like about 6 weeks ago, we made Nottingham Forest look like, world champions. Wolves, we scraped a draw against Wolves.
Yeah.
We're losing to everybody, and we haven't even played the top teams yet. We're going into an era now where we're going to be playing the top teams, and we keep playing like that, Chris. We're going to be down among the dead men very, very soon. So I would have said a few weeks ago, give the man a chance. I think he has 2 more games. I think if the Burnley game is crucial to him, he mightn't even see that. But I think, a bad result against Burnley, I don't see any way back for him. So, Chris, I'm actually full of admiration for you after a day like today, that you're actually at 9 o'clock or after nearly 10 o'clock at night, and you're still battling on for the cause. And I'm waiting for you to give me some encouragement. Tell me something. What do you think?
I'm feeling pretty deflated. I'm feeling pretty flat, to be honest, with you, Null. And
Yeah.
I felt a little bit better after Vinay's message because I think it is good that the club have taken many of the supporters' concerns on board. And of course,
Yep.
the proof is definitely in the pudding of them delivering. You know, not just giving us words, because we have heard words before. But I do feel like Vinay has identified a number of the issues and he is trying to address. And I do get the fact that, the club, certain individuals, certain key members like him at the football club do need a little bit of time and patience to try and, sort some of these issues out. But at the same time, the football needs to be better. The results need to be better. No matter who you've got out injured, no matter what the excuses are, it needs to be better. And you know what? The one reason and the sole reason why I called Nuno to go at that time is because he kept saying in press conferences that we were playing well. Thomas Frank seems to be doing this all the time as well. And he has come out and said we're getting closer rather than further away. I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either. So it's just been, the only thing that encouraged me, Chris, this week was, the Conor Gallagher situation. He became available and the board moved swiftly, decisively, paid the money. That encouraged me, because if Daniel Levy was still there, he would piss about till the 31st of January and possibly lose them, to try and save a few million. That was one positive of this week. Other than that, I'm struggling to find any. And I mean, okay, they've got a new left back coming in, but he's only a kid. He's not going to feature this season. So I think left back is a major area as well. I know that Davis is injured now as well. So you and me have said it a long time. We need some cover at left back, a player that can step in right away. I don't know where you get them, but they're a rare species. But we definitely need some cover there. And do you see anybody coming in like as a striker in the window?
We need reinforcements throughout, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, let's wait to see what opportunities come up, but we need real reinforcements and real quality and game changers to be coming into this team and squad. No, always great to talk to you. We will talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Chris, and come on, you Spurs.
Cheers. Right, we're now going to go to Pete, and then we'll come to Dustin and Orchie. Pete, how are you?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. How are you feeling right now as a Tottenham fan? What have you made of the season and what did you make of today's performance?
Well, I'm trying really hard not to demonetize your platform, so I'll try and keep my language sane. Completely and utterly disconnected and fed up with Tottenham. Most importantly, fed up with Thomas Frank. I think I used an analogy. Most of my career, I've been involved in management, and you very often see situations where people are over-promoted. And he reminds me very much of a Tesco Express manager that's done really well in his little convenience store. So they promoted him into a big out-of-town superstore, and he's just lost, out of his depth, doesn't know what to do.
Pete, who do you think is going to be the Spurs manager at the end of the season?
I think they'll probably go for an interim to the end of the season, and they'll bring Poch back post-World Cup, is what I think will happen.
You'd like to see Poch back then?
I'm not altogether sure, but if nothing else, he's the one person that's going to unite the fan base. He's probably the only manager in recent times that actually got us as a club, as a fan base, as supporters. And I think, although it might be like sticking the plaster on a gaping wound, I do think it would give us an initial lift.
Pete, what did you make of Vinay's message to the fans? Do you feel a little bit more inspired? Do you feel a little bit more positive because he's addressed the supporters' concerns?
If I'm honest, it was much the same sort of thing. That if I had to put out a communication to the Spurs fans, it's more or less exactly what I would have put. And to my mind, it's just weasel words. And I think more importantly than that, the timing of the statement is actually going to hinder us, because you can't possibly put a statement out like that yesterday, and then in the next 48 hours sack Frank. So I fear that in order not to lose face, they'll probably end up hanging on to him a little bit longer than they otherwise would have done, because you cannot put that sort of statement out insisting how you're going to back the manager, this, that, and everything else, and then 48 hours sack him, because he's just going to end up looking like a laughing stock. Although I do think it's definitely the right thing to do. He has to go. Some of his substitutions today would just bewildering. I sometimes wonder if I know as much about football as I think I do, because I'm sat there absolutely aghast watching him take Tal off, leave Colin Moani on the pitch, and leave Odegaard on the pitch. Initially, I was annoyed that they took Archie Gray off, but subsequently I hear that he had a knock, so perhaps his hand was forced there. But his decisions are just completely baffling, and it's not the first time we've seen it, is it? We've seen it all throughout the season, these strange substitutions.
I've got to say, Pete, one thing that really does worry me, and I'm seeing it at most games right now, particularly after poor defeats and poor performances like today, Mickey van der Ven, his body language, it doesn't look good to me, because he looks really, really fed up right now. Do you think he'll be a Spurs player next season?
Absolutely not. Unless somehow, and quite how they're going to do this, I don't know, but if they could miraculously turn this around, I don't believe the players are buying into Frank at all. You can't tell me that this current squad of players, you've got some serious international players there, World Cup winners, players that are the mainstay of their national team, and they're only capable of 14th in the Premier League. I don't buy it. I absolutely don't buy it. If we could get a manager in that could turn it around, be an interim, because the other problem you're going to have now, I see that the problem's twofold. One, you're not going to attract a decent manager in at this stage of the season, but more importantly than that, to affect that turnaround, you're going to have to bring in some 2 or 3 seriously good players. But if we're honest, who in their right mind is going to want to join us at the moment, particularly if that's under an interim manager?
Paul Wilkinson 3115 writes here, all this chat show discussions are really not helpful. Paul, send me an email, tottenhamfanchris@gmail.com. Pop on, because I tell you what, I really would love to hear from some positive fans like yourself to come on here, and particularly Thomas Frank fans. I'd love to hear from you and tell us where Thomas Frank goes from here and how he turns it around. Because I tell you what, me sitting here as a Spurs fan, I really, really want it to work for him. I don't want to go through another managerial appointment at the football club again and again. We seem to be going around in circles, but where do we go? Surely we've got to see signs of positivity week by week. That is an absolute must.
There's got to be. I think in any project you're looking for green shoots, something to hold on to.
Yeah.
If for example, we weren't scoring enough goals, but we were defensively solid, and we went on a run of, say, 5 or 6 games, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. You could see that we're solid at the back, and you think, okay, the next layer that we're going to add on is creative passing, finishing. But we've got something. You've got a block. You've got a foundation to build on. But with this guy, there is just absolutely nothing. And I have to put my hands up and admit I was wrong, because when Frank was appointed, I was actually buzzing. I thought he was going to be fantastic. I thought the young players are going to get really well developed. Tactically, we'd be great. But what I think is happening, we're seeing in football at the moment, is that these managers are being made to look successful because of the systems and the background that they've come from. We saw it with Potter at West Ham, looked fantastic. Went to Chelsea, died on his ass. We've seen Frank come to Tottenham, die on his ass. But the people they've left behind are doing great guns. Keith Andrews, Frank's assistant, allegedly set-piece coach, absolutely flying at Brentford. You've seen the current guy, can't pronounce his name, she'll have to excuse me, at Brighton, doing absolutely fantastic. With little or no history, no career, no great CV to written. I think it's about the systems that these people are surrounded in that make them look good. And you see, once they're taken out of that system and into a different system, or one that isn't the same, they fall flat on their face. You saw De Zerbi went to, was it Brighton, did fantastically well. Potter, again, did fantastically well. Frank did fantastically well. With the exception of De Zerbi, if you take them out of those situations, they fall flat on their face. So I'm of the opinion that very, very many of these managers that we're over-promoting come from great systems and backgrounds and support networks. And once they're taken out of those systems, support networks, you get to see their true ability, or in this case, inability.
Dan writes here on Facebook, I'm sorry, but Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, West Ham, to name a few. Dr. Tottenham, a player, Wilson, who wants out of West Ham, scoring the winner. You can't make this up. I tell you what, Dan, I feel exactly the same. I thought Dr. Tottenham had a free transfer from Spurs a long time ago. I tell you what, we need to get rid of him because this is ridiculous. The way that he is Dr. Tottenham and Spursy all the time. Two terms I absolutely hate. Pete, before you go, anything else to add?
Only your comment earlier, or not your comment, when you read out a viewer's comment that is negative or it's this, you can only talk about what you see. There's nothing I'd love more than to be sat here tonight talking to you about a 6-0 victory, and we're going into Dortmund on Tuesday night with fantastic confidence, and we're going to smash Burnley 6-0.
Yeah.
But you've got to face the fact. The reality is we're in 14th. I don't genuinely see where in February we're going to get any points, and we are in serious, serious danger. Yeah, Wolves are gone. But you look at the two below us, the two above them, we're not that far away from them. And with a horrendous February, we're going to get sucked into it. And I worry that we're becoming the new Everton. We're going to be one of these teams that flirts with relegation in and around the area for weeks and weeks and weeks and years, and eventually we'll go. And we're going to lose all our top players. In answer to your question earlier, I don't see Romero or Van de Ven being here next year. I wouldn't necessarily mind Romero going. I think there's a case for him to be solved. We cash in on him, bring Vuskovic back, maybe make Van de Ven captain, and see where we go from there. But we're in serious decline, and I think it's a dereliction of duty by the board if they let this slide continue and do nothing. So whilst it's awkward that they put that statement out yesterday and may have to sack him tomorrow, to not do that is negligent, in my opinion. They have to arrest this slide. And if that means getting rid of Frank, opening the checkbook, paying bigger wages, just do whatever you have to do to stabilise us going forward. And then we'll believe some of the words that Vinay put out in his statement yesterday.
All I'd say, Pete, is no matter whether you want it to work or not, I know that things cannot go on like they are, that we cannot keep losing the games in the fashion that we are, in the manner that we are, and you cannot keep hearing boos from the Tottenham Hotspur supporters for this set of players and the manager. And it's funny, actually, because when we're very positive about the football club, which we are on this channel, we get called happy clappers. When we're critiquing players and the managers, we get called negative. It's called balance. It's called, having emotion about this football club, because we say good things when it's deserved, and we critique when it needs to be. And the reason why I'm doing this fan show tonight is I've been contacted by so many people today and said, look, I want to come on. I want to have my say. And this is exactly why I do these fan shows. So people like you, Pete, can come on and say exactly how you feel, because people want to be heard and people want to put their voice across, and it's very interesting to get everyone's take on how we are all feeling right now. Pete, thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully we can have you on again very soon.
Yeah, I'd love that, Chris. That would be great. Thank you very much indeed for having me on.
Cheers. Thank you. Right, we're now going to go all the way to Singapore to talk to our good friend Dustin. Dustin, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, that's how I am.
It's 6
Dustin, how you
a.m.
feeling?
now.
It's 6 p.m.
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
Yeah.
You're feeling tired and drained, I should imagine.
This club, I tell you.
Where does it how does it change, Dustin? How does it change in the very near future, without bringing in a number of ready-made players all ready to go? How does it change for Thomas Frank?
I'll tell you why I don't think it's going to change, and this is why I wouldn't say I went early on him, but even when there were games where there were slightly better performances, the performances all looked like they came from the players going, we can't keep doing this, and going off script. And I call it going off script because it's not the way he typically likes to play. The players taking long shots today, that was going off script. right? The players playing through the center, let's going off script. What does Frank like to do? Poro, long balls, crosses, set pieces. So, and the thing about it is that you can say that, you know, Madison and Kulusevski are not available and that's why he doesn't play down the center. No, he just doesn't like to play down the center. So even if you gave him signings, he wouldn't want them. He wouldn't use them. He had signings available previously that could play the ball down the center, but he doesn't like to do it. So I think that's the problem, which is he does not value central ball progression. He thinks it's risky. He thinks if he loses the ball there, he's going to get penetrated down the center. But guess what? We're getting penetrated down the center again, as usual. We saw it in this game. We saw it in the Villa game. Just because you don't play down the center doesn't mean that the opponent can't penetrate you down the center anyway. It still happens. So he keeps trying to play safe by attacking down the flanks. But if the opponent can still attack and get through the center, there's no point. So why don't you play down the center, which we are capable of doing? When we have done it, we have penetrated teams well, especially when we have players like Bergval, Xavi. Sometimes there's Muani's gone off a cliff, but there was a time when Muani was playing one-touch passes with Gray when he was on the left. There were times that we could play down the center and penetrate there, but it doesn't seem to be part of the plan, right? Whenever we are settled in possession, we just go back to the flanks, spamming crosses from Poro again.
Dustin, what do you make of Conor Gallagher's debut today?
He looks a bit off the pace, and he did what he could. So I remember that when I came on after we signed Conor Gallagher, and I know that you and Craig were excited about it, and I can understand why fans are excited about it, because Conor Gallagher is a better profile than what we have, but he's still a profile that we have 4 players that do that same thing, and it doesn't solve our central ball progression issue. So I mean, the reason I wasn't excited wasn't because I don't think Conor Gallagher's a good player. It's just he's a better version of a profile we have too much of, and not the one that can help us unlock our attack. And that's why I wasn't super positive about it. If at the end of the window we get someone that helps with central ball progression, fine, I'm happy with that. But if that's the first signing, then it's like you're not really setting your priorities right, because what we need is a passer, especially a passer that can get the ball to Xavi. Because right now, the reason we haven't seen the best of Xavi Simons is he has to drop deeper to receive the ball, because we don't have people that can pass through the lines to get the ball to him. So when he receives the ball, he's got half the pitch, 2/3 of the pitch that he needs to progress the ball through. If he could stay in the 8th position and receive the ball from someone that breaks the lines, then he's got the final third. He can make a lot more things happen. But right now, he is the only person that can carry, pass, progress the ball, but he has to receive it so deep. So if we had someone that could break the lines, and like that's the reason why a lot of people are feeling this season that, oh, Romero doesn't seem to be playing as well this season as he was last season. Because one of the best things that Romero does is line breaking passes down the center, but we don't play down the center anymore. So right now we're like, oh, actually Van der Ven's better than Romero, because you've taken one of Romero's strengths away, because you don't like playing down the center. So Romero can make those passes, but if no one's making those runs and we're playing central midfield as lava, then you're not getting the best out of Romero's ability to make those passes either.
Dustin, I don't know whether you're looking at the chat, but there is a lot of people talking about Ange Postecoglou. Now, with the amount of analysis that you do on our players, our managers, the style of play, positions, etc., do you think that we would have been in a better position now had we have given Ange Postecoglou season 3?
Very hard to know, because we never got a proper run of us not having injuries, and we're still having injuries now. So that's the thing that blows my mind, right? Because at the time when everyone was blaming Ange for the injuries, I mean, it's very hard to know why injuries happen. But you know, if you consider that under Ange's reign, we were running the most. We were running the most on and off the ball. So, you know, you could see a reason why it might have caused injuries. But we also did things differently now. There's less running now. But also, I think we train Van der Ven to run in a different way. So biomechanically, he's a lot more resilient this season. We will never know. And I think that the difficulty now is that there's a thing called path dependency, that just once you go down a certain path, you can't reset, go back there, and then take that path again because things have already happened. So the thing about firing Ange and not getting season 3 is that you'll never know. And the fan base is already split, right? Right now, you can't have a conversation about any manager without, without people saying, you're an Ange supporter, you're a Frank supporter, and then they just talk past each other, and then there's no productive discussion because they're too busy labeling each other, and that's not the point.
I'm glad you've said that.
Yeah, it's true, right? And
absolutely.
It's pointless polarization, the exact same thing that happens with governments and political systems, which is like you just talk past each other and you don't hold the real people responsible, the club hierarchy, for not supporting managers and giving them time. And that's generally the case.
I will never understand the disrespect on Ange Postecoglou, because you can say whatever you like, 22 league defeats, finishing 17th. He is rubbing shoulders with Keith Birkinshaw and Bill Nicholson, being one of only 3 managers to win us a European trophy at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Respect to the man. A lot of people talk, Dustin, about Mauricio Pochettino. Even the journalists are mentioning Pochettino this evening about the possible departure of Thomas Frank in the near future. Do you get the narrative from a lot of the fan base that Poch comes back and everything's okay? Because, surely if someone like Pochettino walked through the door, or someone else walked through a door for that matter, surely we're going to restart again. It's going to take more time and patience, and they're going to need backing. They're going to need players coming in the door again.
If you put up my slides, I have slides for this.
I do you know what? I love you on this show, Dustin, because you always bring something. Here we go.
Okay. So one of the things that we have a problem with is that the club doesn't have the proper structure. So I think one of your previous guests was talking about how, when Brighton change their manager, when Brighton lose their best players, it always transitions smoothly, more or less, right? Which is they can lose Bissouma, they get replacing with Caicedo. Caicedo's even better. They sell Caicedo, they have Balaba. They lose Potter, they get De Zerbi. They lose De Zerbi, they get Hurtzeleger. And essentially what happens is that clubs that have a proper structure in place, the manager isn't this do or die thing where you lose the manager and then you go, you fall into a tailspin, which is what's happened to United, for example. Right? And what happens when you have a system like that is that even the manager replacements are done by the club. So the club signs players based on how the director of football wants the club to play. And then even if they replace the manager, they don't replace the manager and go, oh, now we have to refresh our entire squad. They replace managers based on the fact that these managers would fit the players they have anyway. And that's the way you get, proper longevity. And that's how you don't live on, like, especially for us, we fire managers every 18 months, right? Every 18 months, you need to spend 2 or 3 seasons to refresh your squad. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, the more important question or answer is not talking about who's the next manager. It's more about getting this damn structure in place so that we stop, even if we fire managers, it doesn't affect us the same way that it doesn't affect these clubs. Chelsea fired their manager and still won the Champions League under Roberto Di Matteo, right? When you have a proper system in place where the club can change any part of their staff and still be able to run, that's what you want it to be. You don't want to have key man risk like that.
Yeah. James writes here, watching on Facebook, Dustin, this guy has more knowledge than the whole of our backroom staff.
And we already have information on what the Spurs manager should look like and all these things, right? We know the play style we prefer. We know how we prefer them to talk about the club. We know what kind of personality they want. We know the way we want them to deal with youth, for example. We know how we want them to develop players. We know what kind of locker environment looks good to us. We already know based on our previous managers what our preferences are. So we just look for something that fits this.
Dustin, Richard writes here, what a depressing season. I don't get excited about Spurs games anymore. Now, let me ask you about the statement or the message from Vinay Venkatesham addressing so many of the issues at the football club, because the board at the moment can't be happy with the way that everyone is feeling. And like I keep saying on all of these shows at the moment, boos at half time, boos at full time. They seem to be getting louder. They seem to be more directed now individually, solely at Thomas Frank. This is not a good look right now.
No, it's not. But this is why, however you feel about, like, there's some people that are more pragmatists in the fan base, which are like, we just should be winning, right? And they think style of play doesn't matter. But if the majority of fans think style of play does matter, and this is from like the push and run era, this is from like, we have an expectation for how we play. So the reality is, even if you get a manager that plays pragmatic football, and they may win for a while. We had that with Mourinho and Conte, right? Past a certain point, if the results don't come, then the patience is a lot less, right? We had managers with worse records, but because they played exciting football, we gave them a lot more leeway.
Dustin, lastly, can I ask what time you got up to watch this game, and have you been to bed so far?
I got up to watch this game. This game was at 11:30. I don't remember anymore. I was too angry to sleep.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, full respect to people like you all around the world getting up at silly times and doing all these presentations to come on a show like this. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. And I tell you what, if for everyone listening and watching right now, do check out Dustin's latest video on this channel, Talking Tottenham Tactics. I tell you what, I don't know how long he spent on this presentation, but it is well worth a watch. So do check it out. Dustin, thanks so much for all of your hard work, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Cheers. That's kind of like where all these slides are from. So if anyone's interested, just I flesh it out a lot more there.
Yeah, the level of detail in Dustin's videos, honestly, it is incredible. It is well worth watching. So do check that out. Dustin, thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right, we're now going to go all the way to Istanbul, Turkey, to speak to Orchie. Orchie, how are you?
Oh, mate, to borrow your word, drained.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I came on the show to have a positive conversation about a good performance, unfortunately. So I don't know. It's hard, like, I mean, Dustin, obviously the time difference isn't as bad in Istanbul, but yeah, there's times when, I stay up or, whatever to watch a match. Sometimes it kicks off at 11 at night here till like 1 a.m. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what we do, where we go from here. Yeah, the easy option is to get rid of, sack Frank. But then who do we get? That's the big question. Obviously everybody talks about interim managers and this and that and the other. As you know, the one name that is out there, number of people have mentioned it, Xabi Alonso. I mean, it kind of ties with what Vinay has come out, in the program, his notes and what he said. Everything he said sounded fantastic. Everything that he's mentioned sounded great. So just like you, when I saw that, I thought, finally, I think it was a bit overdue as well. I think we discussed it in the last live show that, why was the club so silent? So really, that statement should have come out maybe a few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, to say, look, we're aware we're going through a tough period. X, Y, and Z is being done. We're working on this, we're working on that, trying to improve the team, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so the message came, but anyway, I saw it and I was like, yeah, great, fantastic. Yeah, as you said, with some of the previous guests, talked about increasing the wage and all this kind of wage structure and all these kind of things. Great, everything that we wanted to hear. So again, I think it comes down to the board really showing that they mean business. Talk is cheap. It's easy to write these things. It's easy to say these things. My one small glimmer of hope is we've heard similar things in the past, but in the past, it was the previous management. It was always under Daniel Levy, whereas now, obviously, since the beginning of the season, we do have a new structure in place, and it looks like changes are being made all the time. Again, I think a number of announcements this week of new coaches coming in, new, people coming into the club. The guy from, is it Manchester City Group or the City Group coming in. So clearly there's a number of changes still going on in the club. So that's the only kind of glimmer of hope that I have, that this time around, this new kind of hierarchy, this new management team, let's say, hopefully are going to act differently compared to all the previous painful years that we've had. But obviously we need to do something immediately, because we are fast sliding down that table and the results are just not getting any better. I mean, if we were seeing some kind of improvement on performances, even if we're losing matches, if we at least saw that the football itself was improving, then again, we can maybe say, yep, good, or maybe, we're maybe seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But it seems to me like every week, it just seems to be getting worse.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody's riled up about. I think, let's say today we gave it a good go, and it was a cracking game, and let's say we lost 2-1 or 3-2. People still would be unhappy, obviously, but at least we would have given it a good go. But we're not seeing any of it. It's like whatever level you're looking at, or whatever angle you're looking from it, it just looks awful. It just looks terrible.
With the style of play, Orchie, do you think it's going to get better when the likes of if Frank is still here, I might add, after seeing and hearing these reports this evening as we're filming this, when the likes of Madison, Kulusevski come back, and if we do get some more signings in, particularly in those offensive areas, do you think it can get better under Thomas Frank? Can he turn this around, and will we look back at this moment where the majority of the fan base at the moment is clearly thinking that Thomas Frank is not going to succeed? Will we look back at this moment and think, wow, we all got it wrong?
It's difficult to say because nobody has a crystal ball, but saying that.
But what's your gut feeling?
My gut feeling is, to be honest, as you know, in previous shows, I was kind of thinking, well, probably he's going to get time. But I have to say, look, obviously, we have an awful injury list, right? And I don't want people to go off saying, oh, injuries are excuses. It's not. But what I have failed to see from Thomas Frank is an exciting, a progressive style of gameplay, a plan. Because, yes, players can be injured, and less quality players coming in maybe aren't as good as executing the plan. But why a lot of people have lost faith in Thomas Frank, and a lot of people are wanting him gone, is because we're not seeing a style. Like, I mean, even with Ange, like I'm not missing Ange, and I'm not, we should get Ange back or anything like that, because I think Ange wasn't good enough either, especially his league form. So I'm not looking backwards. But even with Ange, you could see his style of play, his style of how he set the team up to play. Go to previous managers, whether it's Conte, Mourinho, they all have, you can pretty much understand the way that they try to play. Whereas with Thomas Frank so far, honestly, I couldn't tell you. I mean, yes, Dustin very fantastically identifies that he loves going down the wings, which is true. I mean, when Kudus was fit, it just seems to basically just pass it to Kudus, pass it to Kudus, pass it to Kudus.
But of course, our goal came from the right-hand side today. Porro, great cross. Yeah. Romero header, brilliant finish.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the other point. I mean, even some of the players, to be honest, a number of the players have to also take responsibility. They have to look at themselves. Like Porro today, I mean, probably the only positive thing I would say about Porro was that cross. Now, does he do that on a consistent basis? Absolutely not. His defending is usually atrocious. passing is usually, yes, we get down the wing, but then the final ball always seems to be poor, which then begs me to think, what the hell do these players work on the training pitch week in, week out, day in, day out? So, I mean, the questions that I would ask is, we seem to be failing at so many different things. I would say earlier in the season, at the beginning of the season, I think things were better. We were seeing that we were scoring goals from corners. We were set up better. We seemed to be at least defending a little bit more better. But since then, I mean, I would say the last kind of month or so, last couple of months have been an absolute disaster. We really seem to, instead of going forwards and building on that positive start to the season, we just seem to be getting worse and worse and worse, which is why one of the other gentlemen previous gentleman made the comparison about, Thomas Frank seems to be, he did well with a local shop, and then now they've asked him to run the, HQ, and he's out of his depth. I mean, I have to say, I'm at a place where I agree with it. I think maybe, yes, he's come to a club like, and with all due respect to Brentford, Tottenham obviously are a bigger club and a much more bigger, animal to deal with. And maybe he is out of his depth. Maybe he can't, cope. He can't keep up with, what it takes to be the manager, the head coach of a team, of a club like Tottenham Hotspur. But I've got to be honest with you. I think I know obviously there's a lot of criticism that can be put on Thomas Frank's shoulders, rightfully so. Also, though, we shouldn't really take any responsibility from players, because I've got to be honest with you, a bunch of those players were not good enough. They weren't good enough today. They weren't good enough in previous games. And we've discussed this. I mean, yes, second half was much better, but why can't they play the full 90 minutes with that kind of intensity at times, with that type, with that attacking intent that we saw more of in the second half? Second half wasn't perfect. Second half wasn't great, but it was a much better performance than the first half was. What is it? What is it causing this team to not be able to perform for full 90 minutes? Why is it that we only come alive once we go 1 goal, 2 goals behind? These are the, immediate things that have to be addressed. And is Thomas Frank the man to address it? It just seems like, well, clearly it's not, because it just isn't working. Yes, every game we seem to be losing a player as well. Today we lost Ben Davies. Not that I'm a big Ben Davies fan, but still, we seem to be losing players every single game at the moment. But I mean, what is the answer? And I think, yes, if they are going to get rid of, with some of the previous guests, this question of, and I've seen it in the comments section as well, people are saying, well, Xabi Alonso is never going to come to Tottenham's, good players are not going to come to Tottenham because we're shit. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Tottenham is one of the top 10 richest teams in the world. And we have an amazing stadium. We have amazing training facilities. Of course, players would want to come, but you've got to incentivize it. I've got to be honest with you. If we are going to get rid of Thomas Frank, which I think probably we should, because we seem to be, free falling right now, and something's got to change. And unfortunately, in these kind of situations, it is always the buck stops with the manager, with the head coach, and he doesn't seem to be able to get. Thomas Frank doesn't seem to be able to improve things. And he may have lost, even if he's lost only half of that dressing room, that's still an unrecoverable situation, because you need all your players. Premier League is one of the most, it is the most competitive, league in the world. And you need all your players to be at their best. If you're going to win games, if you're going to be up there at the top, challenging, you need all your players 100% behind you. And so even if he's lost a quarter of that dressing room, that's an untenable situation. So probably a change needs to come. Now, if what Vinay said in the match program, if they're serious about that, I'm sorry, you go to Xabi Alonso. I do not believe for a moment that you go to Xabi Alonso and you say, right, come to Tottenham right now. All right, we're making a change. You're going to get, 100 million now in this window. We've got 2 weeks left. So we'll get in whatever players you identify and, put them on a good salary. And if you get us in the top 6 by the end of this season, we'll give you, £2 million bonus, and then you'll have 300, 400 million war chest to spend in the summer. If you said that to Xabi Alonso or to any manager, they will come. They will certainly come. And then any top player that you need in your club, if you turn around and pay the wages, they will come because, and then because, for example, you would have attracted a name like Xabi Alonso, who is a winner, and Xabi Alonso rings you up and says, look, we've got this, I've got this project now at Spurs, it's a sleeping giant. You come to us and we're going to get 3-4 other players at your caliber, and we're going to be going for the Premier League next season. We're going to be going for the Champions League next season. You say that, you show your intent, you can get any player in the world, especially if you pay the wages, especially if you pay the money. So I don't buy all this, so-and-so isn't going to come to us because we're rubbish. So-and-so isn't going to come. I'm sorry, we're Tottenham Hotspur. And you look at, we are one of the richest clubs in the world. We're very well run. And and if you pay the money, you can get anybody you want. And that's what they need to go out there and do. Again, I'm putting the responsibility on the board, on Vinay, to go out there and do whatever they need to do to get this sleeping giant of a club back up to where they could be if they were serious about what they said in this week, in the program.
Orchie, I know you've always got a lot to say. Thank you so much for joining us. I was going to say this evening. It's nearly 1:30 in the morning for you. So thanks so much for your time, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you, mate. Again, you're at that. You go to all the games. You suffer just as much, and it must be so hard to come on and do these shows for hours. Especially when you're probably feeling quite deflated yourself. So really, really appreciate this opportunity for us. All of us fans to come on and give our points of view and things like that. So really, really appreciate you and the channel, mate. So take care. And hopefully I honestly, I was planning to come to London today, this week, but it didn't work out. But hopefully in the near future, I'm planning to come over. So when I do, hopefully we'll have a drink.
We look forward to it.
Session.
Top man. Thanks. Cheers, Orchie. Cheers. Right. We're now going to go to Hillsy, who has been extremely patient waiting. Hillsy, how are you?
Like everyone, disillusioned, disappointed. Haven't been this low, I suppose, watching my team for some time, but it's what we've got. And unfortunately, it's through years gone by of bad management, bad choices that we're here, where we are now.
Hillsy, what did you make of the game today?
It was a tough watch. I was at the Aston Villa game, and that was one hell of a tough watch on the first half. And then the second half was quite impressive and made me feel optimistic. And then I thought, okay, let's see. And I was hoping we might get some kind of reaction because there was a positive outlook after that. Even though we lost, I just felt that there was a better attitude, but we just did the same again. And as much as I didn't want to say goodbye to Frank, I think that's the only answer, because nothing's changing. The way the attitude we're starting games is the same. We're starting the same systems, which isn't working. So if it isn't working, why are you not changing it? When something is working, you don't change what is working. You definitely change what ain't working. And we don't seem to be tinkering or changing. And the players seem to be the same people in the same kind of places. And we're doing a bit too much of this. Look how the fans are when Vicario has the ball and everyone's scared to bits that any minute now we're going to lose a goal. Every single time we feel that, no matter who you are there, you think, please stop messing around, just get it up. And Romero, and I love these players when they're positive, but they don't seem to be playing with that manner or that positivity. And we talk about Ange, or I've heard people talk about Ange. I don't want Ange back because that time's gone. We disrespected him 100% with all the chat, but, he did his job. He did what he said he would do, and we never trusted him to do it any further. So we made that choice, and we have to lie in that bed. But I was gutted that we didn't take him further. But we then gave Frank a chance, and I must admit, I thought, hey, he's done well, but this is too big for him. It's simple as that. I think the club is too big for Frank, and the staff and the players, they're too strong-headed, and I think Frank's not that kind of manager.
Hillsy, what do you think Thomas Frank goes into, when he went into the dressing room after the game, what do you think he said to the players? Because in the press conference, he tries to give a lot of positives and he says a lot of comments which some of us are absolutely baffled by, that he thinks that things are moving forward rather than backwards. What do you think he says in the, but what do you think he says in the dressing room? Do you think that the players are thinking, what are you on about? We didn't play well at all today.
They're not listening. They're giving him lip service whenever they do. It's just like anybody. And I don't mean this disrespectfully to Frank, even though it sounds it. But they know that's why their tell is acting like he is. Van der Ven is acting like his body language. You only have to watch him. Romero is doing exactly what he wants to do. I mean, brilliant that he was up there for the header, but what was he doing up there at that point? He should have been working his way back. There's times that he goes wandering about. And I've got no problem with what he does because he tries and he wants to be positive with the team. But he's got his own agenda. And this is the problem. It's called respect. And where Ange did have that from a lot of the players, and that's why they kicked off when they talked about sacking him, and they did. And there was all this hoo-ha, because he had the players, because they played progressive football. They were very bad, unfortunately, when it comes to the defensive side of it, because he didn't do that side of it with any sureties. But for sure, they respected him more than I think they'd respect Frank. And that's why I just think it's... I think John Heitinger, who we got in, I think he was not a smokescreen, but I think he's brought in exactly for this reason. They didn't realise it was going to be this quick, and nor did I. I thought that we could get through West Ham. We wouldn't do well against Dortmund. We might just get through Burnley, but then the problems would come with the next fixtures, and then he would be gone, and that Heitinger would be there to just take over as an interim. Because, I think everybody is itching towards bringing back Poch, even though I'm not too sure if that's a great move. What we had before, will we get again? And if we don't, are we then going to turn on him? And this is my problem about, we are so disgruntled as a fan base now, because we've been starved of that decent football, and we need someone to come in and just go, this is it. This is what we're doing. And positivity of players being behind him and sticking with him, board, club, everybody, sticking behind the manager. And I thought we was going to have that with Frank, but Frank is not the man from what I've seen football-wise. And I know he's a good coach, but I think he's a coach and he's not a manager.
Yeah, I can tell you now, these shows are definitely easier when we're winning rather than
tough
times like this.
Yeah, we can talk about the good things we did. We did this, we did that, but at this moment in time, it's destroying all my history of watching Tottenham play in previous times gone by. In the 80s, when we played flowing football in the 71s and all that lot, there was and we had great players. That's the other problem we've got at the moment, I think, is we talked about it, I've heard you talk about it, but the loss of Kane, who did so much more than just be a striker. Sonny, who was just an amazing player. That quality of world-class players, which they were and they are, when you're suddenly losing them, the time when Poch had the team, when you had the Vertonghen's and Altaveros and all that lot, and we had the wing, the right back, left back, and we had Dele, and Ericsson, there was just movement everywhere. And we have good players to become good players, but we've got too much youth and not enough experience. So I'm really pleased about Conor Gallagher. I thought he had a real hard game and looked out of his depth, to be honest, because he didn't know where he had to be or what he had to do. He was just running around like a headless chook, in a sense, which was a shame, because I would have hoped that we could have given him a better start. But he's quality and will be good for us in the long run, but under a different manager. I'm sorry.
John writes here, I feel sorry for Thomas Frank. We as fans have been through this over and over. Injuries, deflections and errors, along with poor signings. Hillsy, anything else to add before you go?
Well, yeah, I mean, just that. I mean, just basically, you could go. It's kind of repeat all the time, and I would love to have a different chat about things that are positive, and I do. I will positive as I can be. Ricky, your lovely Ricky Norwood, he is always my positive, stick that you listen to and go, yes, I'm with you, Ricky, I'm with you. And even he's deflated, and is shot to bits, because it is so hard to watch a team that you love so well be void. And I don't believe it's all Frank. Them players really do need to stand up and look. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and I'm not going to name her because it's just witch hunt and I don't want to do that, but there's players in our team that are just going through the motions at times, and that's not good enough. That's not Spurs. That's not what we do. We go out there, we give it everything, and there's players who are hiding, and it's a shame, because we need a manager to come in and grab it by the horns, and I do hope we find it. I really do. Who we get, I don't know, but we did find, I mean, I'm sorry to bring up, but Man U went to Carrick. I wish we'd gone there all day long, because Michael Carrick, in my opinion, ex-Tottenham player and everything, what a brilliant job he's done. But he had association with them. Of course, he would go with them. And he started off well. We'll see what goes on. It's only one game, but it's a good start. But there's positivity. And I would like us to try and find a Robbie Keane or someone like that to come in to give us a positive and an experience of knowing how we, Tottenham, like to play.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's me. Thank you for having me, as always.
Hillsy, thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, take care, mate.
Cheers. Right, we're now going to go to Rich, and then John and Luke will come to you next. Rich, evening, how are you?
Good afternoon, Chris. Doing okay in life, but Spurs just continue to keep doing what the Spurs do to us.
It's lovely and sunny where you are. Where are you?
I'm in California, mate. Last time I chatted with you, it was just after the big win last year at the end of the season in Europe, and the high that we were on, and just I watch all your content just while I'm busy doing my life over here, and I just remember how happy you were and how happy we all were with that win, and then to be, not even a year later, we're back here, and it just feels like a never-ending cycle. And I'm the only positive I can give you, just on a personal note, about today's game was that it wasn't one of those midday games which I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to watch. So at least it wasn't that.
Rich, where are you on Thomas Frank?
If I backtrack, I agreed. I understood. I don't know if I fully agreed, but I understood why Ange was relieved of his duties. I think I would have liked to see Ange get given that third year, but with Daniel Levy, I think it was always going to end with him getting fired regardless. I just didn't know. I didn't see that one being a long-term fit. Thomas Frank, I wasn't quite convinced when we hired him. I think he interviewed with Manchester United and Liverpool, and they both, if we're to believe the reports, they both passed on him, and so it just felt like, all right, we'll give him a go at a big club, and everybody agrees he's a nice guy, but it's just not convincing, the style of football, and there's no, like one of your previous guest said, there's no green shoots to at least grab onto. He's not even. We don't have any youth. Like, we've sent Mikey Moore out on loan, and he's absolutely loving life at Rangers, and it's really kind of hard to see. And I would love for him to have stayed and just got some game time for Spurs, and at least we've got some green shoots that he's playing some youth, or there's a style of football that it doesn't always have to. Of course, we want it to match the Spurs way, but just a style of football that we can get behind. We all were calling out for stability because we know how many coaches we've seen over the last. I've been a Spurs fan since Jurgen Klinsmann. Told you this. I think I told you this last time. He was the reason why I'm from the middle of nowhere, Yorkshire, and I was growing up needing a team. Didn't have anybody telling me who to support, so I picked Spurs. So I picked this life.
Yeah.
So and it was I blame Jurgen Klinsmann. He was the reason. And there's a style of football, even when we were when we've not always been on top, but when we've been struggling, we've always had a fight, or we've had a skillful player who gets the ball and gets everybody up out of the seats. There's just nothing now. It's playing it out wide, and it's not just Thomas Frank. I don't think if I had a crystal ball, I think, and I read it, I think it would say Frank goes probably after the Burnley game. I don't see us getting a result against Dortmund. They're absolutely flying, and we've been linked with one of their players. Is it Adam Adeyemi? And he's probably going to score a hat trick midweek. And then we're going to go away to Burnley, where we've always struggled. That's a tough place to go. So to try and find a result against Burnley doesn't look likely, given the way we're playing at the moment. And so I think he probably, if I was to be a betting man, I'd put money on he leaves after the Burnley game, and we have Heitinga for the rest of the season. Then Poch comes, and I don't know my opinion on whether I want Poch back or not. I know sometimes people, there's people don't like to go back with former players or former coaches, but maybe that's part of our history, that it has worked for us. We brought Klinsmann back, and he saved us from a relegation fight. Well, we were in a relegation fight, and he saved us from relegation in 1998. And then Gareth Bale came back, and he got great stats for us upon his return. So maybe it's written in the stars that Poch comes back and he wins a trophy with Spurs, which I know we all know he wants to do, and kind of always teases us about. And I think not only for the incredible content you'll be able to produce with him being your doppelganger, but I think also just to get that, it's the constant conversation that will never go away until he comes back and tries again. It will always talk about it. Doesn't matter whether we stay with Frank. Doesn't matter whether we bring in Xabi Alonso. We'll always in the future talk about Poch. So I think it just has to happen. That's my guess. If I was to bet, that would be how it plays out. And then, then next season he wins a trophy. How about that? Would we take this dire situation for all that? I think I would.
Oh, do you know, Rich? You mentioned you mentioned Jurgen Klinsmann, and Klinsmann's one of my all-time favourites, and along with Heung-min Son. What partnership was better, Son and Kane, or Teddy and Klinsmann?
Chris, mate, that's like I can't pick. That's like asking me to choose between my children. I can't do that.
Yeah.
No, well, I think stats based, you have to go with Kane and Son, because just the best duo in Premier League history. The stats tell us that. But just for the pure me being a young kid watching Sheringham and Klinsmann on Match of the Day every weekend, and enjoying us going up to Liverpool and actually winning at Anfield in the cup was they were amazing. I love Teddy. Teddy was amazing. He was amazing. And with Darren Anderson swinging the crosses in, talk about good old times. But going back down memory lane, I do feel like, unfortunately, where we are at right now reminds me of 1998. It reminds me of the kind of the players disconnect, and just we all believed we had a better team that shouldn't be in that situation. We all know that we shouldn't be in a situation, but I worry heavily that we're going to be in a relegation battle. Look at our February fixture list. It does not read very promising for any points. And I feel like I picked up West Ham's fixtures through February. They've got some tough games, but it's balanced out with winnable games for them, especially given that Dr. Tottenham just allowed them to get a feel-good moment, which we always seem to do. I just don't. The only positive I know is that we go in cycles, and life goes in cycles. So this is the down, and there'll be an up eventually. And if it's in a year from now, we're having a cup run with Poch, then maybe we'd all take that. I don't know. I don't want to get relegated, and I don't want to be too proud to think we're too big to get relegated, because Newcastle, and I've got being from Yorkshire, I've got a lot of Leeds mates, and they will absolutely attest to there is no club. They went down to Division 1. They went to League One, dropped that far down. And to think of Leeds United down there, and think Newcastle got relegated, and I went to university in Birmingham, so I've got a lot of Villa fans. It can happen, and I don't want us to lose sight of that. It feels bad because the players, Mickey van der Ven, he wants out. It just looks like it. His body language does not speak of someone who's happy.
Yeah. Definitely got to win football matches. Rich, lastly, talk to me about Pochettino. So many of our guests come on here. I quite often get accused of talking about Pochettino. It's not me. It's you lot coming on here talking about Poch all the time. But you being in the States, what's the mood like there with Poch managing the USA, particularly with the World Cup coming up?
It's kind of hard because football over here is, I'm watching the San Francisco 49ers later. That's the priority. So I think nobody really talks about it right now amongst soccer fans over here. I think it's divided opinion. I think it's they are hopeful to make it to the knockout rounds, and I think it helps that the writing's on the wall that he's got this one tournament. I think everybody knows that he's there for this tournament, and then he's going to be free and open. And I think that's also the burden Spurs have, is that they know he's going to be free in the summer. I will say, on just back onto a Spurs note of over here, it's really Thomas Frank is the latest in a series of the merry-go-round of managers and things, and it is on the board. It's ultimately on the board. And if you are going to say you're going to back somebody, we didn't sign a left back or a left winger this summer, and we knew we had a coach who likes to go down the wings. Then why do we have we have no left-footed player in a team? It feels like we're always cutting back, and then it passes back to midfield, and then it goes back to the defenders, and then it goes back to Vicario when he boots it. And it's because there's no balance in our team. So it is on the ownership to get it right. And stability doesn't mean bore us to tears. Stability doesn't mean, we can be ambitious. It doesn't mean just go for safe purchases. Like Conor Gallagher was safe. It fits a bit of an injury crisis right now. That's all well and good, but they need to splash the cash and get some left-sided players and a striker if they want to push on from it. Because the Premier League this year is not too far of a stretch to say we could get into Europe. It's really hard to say that we could right now, given the way we're playing, but with some players coming in, which I know also begs the question of who would want to come. Well, I think that money speaks, and especially in a World Cup, it's on the recruitment and on the scouts to find those players who are kind of just sitting, maybe playing 60% of the time, and offer them up. Like you can play every single week here in Champions League too. And just finally on the ownership, they had a massive opportunity when we were in the Champions League. When we were playing Liverpool in the Champions League final, there was kids all around here. I used to see it, Spurs shirts everywhere around here. And now I don't see any. They're all wearing the hottest trend. And there was an opportunity for our ownership to crack on, back Poch, and take Spurs to the next level. And they didn't do it. And so I think future, we have to all embrace the fact it's probably going to be Poch coming back, and Chris Cowland's going to have some amazing doppelganger style content coming our way. I can't wait.
Rich, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for taking us down memory lane as well. We'll speak to you soon.
Always. Yeah. Cheers. Come on, Spurs.
Cheers.
All right.
Right, we're now going to go to Des. Des. Oh, Des is not there.
Des is here. Sorry, Chris.
Des is here. Des,
I
how
was
are
just
you?
watching. Would you believe I was just watching the penalty shootout of the Scottish Cup? Sorry about that. I was listening. So,
Des, how would you describe the performance today against West Ham?
Got to say, I was working. Just got in and saw the last. I listened to a bit of it coming along in the car driving from work, and it sounded like we were getting back into it. In between getting out of the car, getting into the house, it was back to 1-1, and it did look positive. But we had a lot of possession, but created nothing clear cut, nothing really on target. And then just when it went, for the corner at the end, I think it started with Jed Spence giving away a free kick, and then it went to a corner, and you could see what was coming. You just knew, and you knew that the whole atmosphere was just going to turn toxic, which it did. So, but you have to say, as much as we slit ourselves, I mean, you have to give Nuno credit. What a substitution! Sitting there thinking West Ham were under the cosh at that point, and he decides to bring a striker on, and I'm looking at thinking, what is he doing? Crazy. But yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I wish we had a coach who could make decisions like that right at the end can grab you a win. That would be. I don't wish for Nuno back, by the way, but just someone who's a bit brash and sees an opportunity and takes those decisions and goes for it.
Des, what did you make of the message from Vinay Venkatesham? Do you feel better about him addressing a lot of the issues that supporters have?
No, I think it's just flannel, Chris. I'm not buying any of it. I think it's just maybe the sense what was coming today if it was another defeat, especially against arch rivals, hated rivals. I think it was just flannel. Where has that sort of speech been all season? All that sort of, especially when things were going well. I don't have any faith in the people that are running the club. The fact that, we've seen for about 5 weeks that Thomas Frank should be gone. He's not up to the job, and they've set back. They've watched us go out of the FA Cup with a flat performance. I mean, I said it last week. We played well for 15, 20 minutes. We didn't hear people saying, oh, we were brilliant in the second half. We weren't. We created next to nothing, scored 1 goal. I think we had another chance a few minutes after that, and that was it. So sometimes you have to be realistic, and the setback, they've allowed that to happen. We've now potentially, because West Ham at some point were always going to start putting a run together. Today, even get a draw from that game, get a draw next week against Burnley, and you keep those two teams 13 and 16 points behind or whatever. But now it's just, you would drag yourselves into potentially a dogfight when we'll have such tough games coming up. Tuesday night, Dortmund, it's going to be flat again. And one thing that German teams, as we saw last year with Frankfurt, the atmosphere they create in the stadium is unbelievable. So we're going to have our fans in the stadium probably flat with everything that's going on at the minute. So how does that transmit through to the players if the German fans are pumping and singing and making so much noise and we're just flat? It's just worrying. It's really concerning.
Des, if you were one of the board members or indeed Vinay right now, what would be going through your head? Because if Spurs can't beat a real struggling side, and that is very fair, that's not being disrespectful, a real struggling side this season in West Ham United. Spurs in Feb have the 2 Manchester clubs, City and United, Newcastle and Arsenal. 3 out of those 4 games in Feb are at home, where, of course, we know we are struggling. Only 4 wins out of the last 25 home games in the Premier League. How are we going to get results? How are we going to perform in these games when we can't beat the likes of West Ham? And when you look at some of the other results and performances of teams down there, just above the relegation zone, Nottingham Forest beating us very comfortably, only 1 shot on target in that game. I know Thomas Frank is trying to get some of the positives out of some of these performances. And I think it's very fair to say, I know some people will sit here and go, oh, there's no positives. You can take positives out of games. You can. But there's not enough. There's not enough, is there?
No, there's no real. There seem to be. It's all about getting momentum. I think West Ham will probably pick some momentum up from today. They'll have a game next week. Then when the FA Cup week's on, I think they're still in the FA Cup, aren't they? So they'll be, if they are still in the FA Cup, they'll be able to rest some players for that game. They'll also, if they're not in it, they'll have a week off. It's just, it's madness. The thing that I can't grasp is 8 months ago, we were winning a European trophy, and to be in this situation, those people on the board just seriously need to take a good look at themselves. They were there, they were celebrating when things were going right, and to all intents and purposes, it's not all Thomas Frank's fault. There's a lot of bad infrastructure within Spurs. There's a lot of bad decision making. There's a lot of money not being spent. I mean, we can obviously have a problem at left back, and we're going out and buying someone from Brazil with potential instead of trying. I know January isn't easy in the transfer window, but instead of getting someone in who's experienced, we're making the same mistakes again. We're going out and buying young players with potential and with obviously an eye on residual value. And I think someone posted online earlier on, anyone who calls transfers, player trading is not someone who should be trusted. And it's a really good point. Someone posted that on Instagram earlier on.
Ray writes here, the positives are drying up. Des, anything else you'd like to add?
I just think, the Spurs board now need to stop messing about and make the decision, make it fast. And I think, I'm sounding like a broken record because I said this a few weeks ago. Get rid of Thomas Frank. It was a vanity project. It's not working. Get rid of him. Even if you're going to bring someone like Ryan Mason in, do something like that. Mason has played under, has worked under 3 or 4, experienced managers, all with contrasting styles and approaches to the game. So, the amount of experience that he has picked up, and also, like someone mentioned earlier about people won't want to come to Spurs. Mourinho came to Spurs, Conte came to Spurs, so that's nonsense. Spurs are capable of getting anybody if they want to. It's just whether these people have the ambition to go out and get the right person. But make the decision now before it starts really financially impacting the club, and then in turn causes a lack of funding, a lack of being able to spend next season if we're not in a European competition, which at the minute doesn't look likely.
Des, as per usual, thank you so much for joining us. Always great points that you bring up. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Take care, Chris. Keep smiling.
Yes.
Bye.
Right, we're now going to go to our last guest of the fan show this evening, and we're going to talk to Luke. Luke, how are you feeling? How are you?
Yeah, not brilliant. I think I've turned many corners this evening, actually, because, as you know, because I've spoken to you about it a few times, I've been trying to sort of find positives or reasons that there might be something to hold on to. But tonight I watched that game and I couldn't help but think, and we've seen this a lot before.
Yeah.
But this where managers get this sort of obsession with trying to achieve something with a team. They seem to spend all week on the training ground. They get a lot of time to work on it. But then the 11 players step out on the pitch and do the exact same things they were doing the week before, and the week before that, and the week before that. At least with Ange, I suppose, as our last example before Frank, he would say, that's the way I want to play, and he was very bullish about it. But Frank kept telling us that he's going to add layers and things will improve and get better. And he even sort of, after the game today, he was saying, oh yeah, no, there were real positives. And I was thinking, there weren't. We looked utterly toothless going forward. We've still got a number of our players misplacing passes, very easy passes, which suggests that those attacking patterns are not habit to them yet. And we're 6 or 7 months in.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Luke, because these are basics. These are basics. And we've seen this a lot recently.
Yeah, it's and the other thing is, if you see it on the pitch, I'm seeing it, you're seeing it, we're all seeing it. Frank must be seeing it. He goes back and watches the games. He has analysts that watch the games. So then he has opportunity to fix that, to do something about it on the training ground and be proactive with it. And the irony is, he's painted as the pragmatic coach, particularly in comparison to Ange last season. But pragmatism is about fixing your issues and being very good at analysing what your problems are and then directly doing something about them. And it just doesn't seem to be happening. So you could argue, some of these players, and I do think the squad has holes in it. It has players who can't do some of the things that Frank wants them to do, and he's having to put them on the pitch anyway. But today I looked at that team and I thought, this team should be able to do the job today. And they just could. They mustered almost nothing in the first half, right? By the end of the first half, I thought, if we play like that in the second half, West Ham will win 3 or 4-0. And that is a really, really sort of damning feeling at this point, because that West Ham team is, to be honest, pretty poor. And they started showing that as soon as they got under pressure. So yeah, I just think it's, for me, I know a lot of people felt this earlier, but I've now got to the point where that's enough now. I think you aren't making enough of an impact. I think the whole problem began at the start. I think Frank's approach to it was wrong. He looked at it as a project. He looked at us and said, well, they finished 17th last season, so I need to build them up. In his press conferences, he said, I'm going to add layers. I think the problem with that is that that's too slow. You need to hit the ground running faster than that. You need to build much quicker than that. You need to get patterns of play working. You can't just spend a season building a defensive unit and then decide you're going to start attacking in season 2. It doesn't work like that. So I think that he failed from day one with his approach, unfortunately. And I have to say, I think I heard Craig say it earlier when you were chatting to him. I think he actually doesn't understand the club and the culture of it. He sort of always sounds very external when he talks about it. And that's part of the issue. And, for whatever went wrong, I think Ange did get it. And I think Frank doesn't. So that's a key contrast there. But yeah, how are you feeling, Chris?
I feel pretty deflated, actually. I really do. Yeah. I felt deflated last week when we went out of the FA Cup. It really does affect me, actually, when we go out of cup competitions, particularly so early. Domestic cups mean a lot to me as a Spurs fan. And when we go out of them, it upsets me. And, of course, then we've got the league and we've got the Champions League. Of course, we're in Champions League action next. Let's see what happens next. And then, of course, we've got Burnley away next weekend. And then we've got the games coming thick and fast again. Feb is going to be a very tough month. Look, one thing that kind of bothers me at the moment is I never, ever, and I will never, ever tell people how to react. But I feel like the booing at the stadium is really not helping matters, because I feel like when the players are booed, Thomas Frank is booed, I feel like some of the players now are literally going, oh, again, you feel like that again. And I feel like they are then looking at the fans as if to say, they're asking about this connection. There doesn't feel that connection. The connection actually seems to be getting worse. It seems to be more distant because of the booing. But of course, at the same time, the players and the manager must give something for the fans to feel positive about. That, we record these shows every week. People like me and Craig and all of the regulars, including yourself, we always try. And it's so much easier. Like I've said, it's so much easier to talk about positive things than the negative things on here. But you've got to see more. We've got to see more from this team. Is it down to Thomas Frank, or is it down to the players, or is it a bit of both? Where is the problem for you right now? Because we could sit here all day saying we need better players, but even if you were manager of a Sunday League team, that you could get that team to work to give it a go. That you could, get them to say, look, the attacking intent must be there, and you train and train and train to work those systems. Are you seeing enough to make you feel positive about Frank going forward?
No, absolutely not. I think that I agree with what Dustin said earlier, actually, that I think some of our best moments in the last few weeks, like Romero's goal today, came from a moment of the players going, we can't do this anymore. Why was Romero there? I don't think that's a Frank tactic. I think Romero has gone, stuff it, I'm going to take the game by the scruff of the neck. I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And ironically, in doing so, he also showed up our problem with a quality number 9, or not having a quality number 9, right? Because he was in the exact position that Harry Kane would have been in, and scored a fantastic header. So the fact that the players are having to do that is already a sign that the game plan's not enough. I actually think, your previous guest said it, or we got Mourinho, we got Conte in. We've had really, really good managers who can be successful, and they failed. So in answer to your question, Chris, I think that the setup of the whole club in the footballing side, not the business side, but the footballing side, is wrong. And I think many, many managers would fail. Many people would come into this club and really struggle to deal with the sort of lack of ambition, lack of front foot thinking, or just being decisive in the transfer market. The kind of planning, the forward planning as well. When we had a chance to buy players to replace our players, when we had a really good team under Pochettino, we didn't get any good youngsters in. We had no one sort of waiting to replace other players that were the prospects. We just didn't bring anyone in, and we went 2 transfer windows without buying anyone. I think we're still actually suffering from that, to be honest, because we've had to. You look at how much we've spent in the last 5 or 6 years. It's actually comparable to many of the other teams in the top 6. But you could say we've had far more sort of duffs in that time, because we've been desperate to fill places very quickly when we've realised there's big holes in the squad, whereas other people are sort of gradually building. And so I actually think most managers would have failed. I can't think of many managers that would have actually come in and succeeded. This is why I also worry about, I think Frank has to go now because I think his job's untenable, but I worry about who's going to step in and do it. Now, I think there's, a fan favourite. I've heard people say about like Redknapp would galvanise the fans. I think that's definitely true. It would. Everyone would love to see that, but only for a limited period of time. And then we're back to square one again. I think that, Vinky Tesham's talked a big game in the programme notes, but we still haven't seen it yet. So we've got to see it before we can actually start feeling as though it's going to impact the manager. We need to see a big signing coming in midfield who can progress the ball quickly. And then if that doesn't work with that manager, we can say, well, look, this manager's not using the resources properly. It's down to the manager. But I just feel like the club aren't backing any manager properly. They haven't done for as long as I can remember. And we will never, ever see progress until we get both things working. And it's the one thing that Frank has said consistently that he's right about is alignment. But he keeps saying the alignment's there. Well, it's not yet, is it?
Let me ask you that about that, Luke, because he mentions that word a lot about alignment with the board. And he also said in the post-match press conference today after the West Ham game, I feel the trust from everyone. He clearly feels that he is going to get the time and the patience. He was also asked this pre-West Ham game as well. The Independent have just stated here in the last couple of minutes, further meetings are expected to take place on Sunday as the Tottenham Hotspur hierarchy weigh up whether Thomas Frank will remain in charge. How do you see this panning out? Will he be Spurs boss in the dugout away at Burnley next weekend?
Well, I think that would probably be an easy game to manage because he's away from home. But it's the one in the midweek against Dortmund at home that I mean, I've seen people say, oh, the crowd are going to turn on him, but I don't think anyone's going to be there. People are starting to vote with their feet. I mean, I don't know, what did it feel like for you in the stadium today? Because I think we were sort of 7,000 short of a full stadium.
Yeah, it's interesting because the seats, the empty seats, there are a lot of them. And it's funny when the attendances come out, the attendance figures, it's never right. There are a lot more empty seats. And it feels sad, actually, Luke. I must say, it does feel sad whenever, and I've said this before, whenever I see an empty seat at our stadium, because when Pochettino was our manager, when we moved in there in April 2019, you could not get a seat in that place. It's an incredible stadium. And like Pochettino said, we've got this mansion. We need the furniture to put in it. We come back to this same old statement, this same old saying, and, and Antonio Conte's rant. And let me ask you, lastly, Luke, about Romero's comments. What did you make of his comments after the Bournemouth game?
Oh, I was thinking about the one today where he called it a disaster, which I thought was
Or
interesting.
that as well. Yeah.
I thought that's really interesting because that's certainly not aligned with what Frank said. But the telling lies. I can only assume that means that he thinks that when he signed his contract, he was promised that the club were going to move in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And he's looked at the transfer window last year. I imagine in the summer, and I imagine the squad have got an idea of where they think they're light on the ground. And he's gone, well, it didn't happen. Well, halfway through this transfer window, he's seen one player come in and he's thought it's still not happening. So I imagine he's thinking, look, this is not what I was promised. You could argue that the board went through a huge upheaval after the summer transfer window, but I think if you're going to promise someone something on their contract, you can't then just go back on it because you've sacked the guy that made the promises, which I assume was Levy at the time. So it's funny, really, because I think he's feeling the way we are, but he must know a bit more than we do. And that's what's quite worrying. If he knows a bit more than we do, sometimes I hear rumours and I hear people talking about what's going on at board level, and I think we don't really know that, do we? We don't actually know what's happening. We just speculate, and we all love really delving into that. That's kind of like part of the passion of supporting a football club. But when your captain comes out and starts saying stuff like that, you think, oh no, it's actually true. It really is going to pop behind the scenes, and they really are not doing the things they want to do. And I think you mentioned it before, maybe a few days ago, that I think it's Alex Crooks is really adamant that Spurs or the owners ENIC just want to sell, and they're not really interested in funding the club. And until we see otherwise, he's right, and that's disturbing, isn't it? Because what sort of state are they going to leave us in when they sell if they're not willing to continue investing in the team? No one's going to invest and then immediately sell because you've lost money on your asset then. But you don't want to try and sell an asset that's lost quality because it will drop in value. So they're stuck somewhere in the middle. Do they invest a bit more to improve the asset so it's worth more? Or do they just go, stuff it, we're going to cash out and leave it as it is? At which point they could, see us get relegated and go, we don't care, we'll lose the money. I don't see them doing that, but who knows what they really think.
What I think they really think, Luke, at the moment is that it wouldn't be a good look if they did sack Thomas Frank at this point, because when you've got Vinay putting out this 2-page message to the fans in the matchday programme ahead of the West Ham game, and you've got Thomas Frank constantly saying, I feel the trust and the confidence from the board, where do the club go from here? Because if they do suddenly sack Thomas Frank, they're trying to mend this connection with the fans that Vinay has said. We know that there is a distance between the fans and the club right now, and then they're trying to mend that. Do they mend it by sacking Thomas Frank or keeping him? Because some of the Spurs fans, certainly in the stadium today, they feel frustrated. So will that frustration go onto the board if Thomas Frank does end up staying? Certainly if we did lose the game on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Charrington is a bit of a long name to start chanting against, isn't it? But Daniel Levy was much more easy to make a chant about. But I think you mentioned it before about the booing and the kind of toxicity of it and the way that's sort of more damaging. The thing about booing is that you can't really tell who that's necessarily targeted at. You hear a load of booing, you think, well, it could be Frank, could be the whole team, it could be an individual player, it might be the board. And the board can kind of hide behind the fact that, it's probably Frank, he's the front man. So you hear the booing, you get that. But today, it was pretty clear. The Tottenham fans were singing, "You're getting sacked in the morning."
Yeah.
So if the board do sack, it's exactly. I've said this about Levy before. If he sacks the manager, it's got to go one up the chain, hasn't it? Next time people want to complain, it's got to go to the board. So, but the problem what they've done now is, whilst Vinay Venkatesham does the public face of it, he's, the board have kind of like separated themselves from everyone, I think, in the way that they've restructured and organised themselves. We don't hear from any of them. Daniel Levy, because he was a part owner as well, had a bigger say in that boardroom. And therefore, if he was the person we were directing our ire at, we were actually directly affecting someone who had shares in the club. If we're now going to start, protesting or booing Venkatesham, how does that work? How do you even target that or aim that at someone? It's almost impossible. And that's the situation that the club have put us in, is that the manager's always the man who is thrust up as like the human shield for the board for us to all have a pop at. But when he's gone, what do? But honestly, if he's still there on Wednesday night, and the likelihood is we'll get taken apart by a very good Dortmund team, I mean, imagine the atmosphere there. It's going to be horrific. So I don't know. There must be a point where there's a tipping point. They can no longer support him. They can no longer hold him up as the human shield, if that's maybe a bit dramatic to say that.
Luke, I might see you on another fan show in the very, very near future.
Hopefully.
I'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, Chris. Bye.
I said Luke was our last guest, but Phil has just joined us from Australia, so we can't turn him down. Phil, how are you?
Yeah, wonderful. Just booked my appointment with a psychologist, where he asks me, why do you support Spurs? There's a lot better enjoyable things in life. And it's a habit. It's an addiction. It's my life.
Well,
you know,
for the next 10 minutes, I'll be your therapist, and this will be a free session. How are you feeling?
Okay. Disgusted. Why can they only play 45 minutes that are almost good? I mean, what's ironic is that we've played quite well in parts against Bournemouth. We played quite well in parts against Villa. We played quite well in parts against West Ham, and probably the best performances, and we've lost all three. So I don't understand. It's if they're on the training field, what are they training? Do they look at each other? Are they total strangers? My opinion is that the lack of movement and options off the ball is a big problem. Also, left-hand side, because, well, both wings very rarely go to the byline to cross the ball. If you cross the ball from behind, then it can go in off a defender. The forwards are attacking the ball. Fine. But each wing is coming on the inside, and it's very hard to attack the ball from that way. And there's no change. There's no variety. You know, I've told you again, I'd like to keep Frank. We can't keep changing things and everything else. But Einstein said that if you keep repeating the same mistakes again and again and expecting a different result, you've got a problem.
It can't
go on like this. And that's what we're doing. I don't see any change in the way we play.
No.
Xavi, sorry?
I was going to say, Phil,
Xavi is much better in the middle, and he has to go to the left-hand side. Well, he's senior. Yeah, hello?
Yeah, I think the connection.
Sorry, you there? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think the connection's a bit poor, Phil. I was going to say, it can't go on like this. Deb Jones also watching on X. She writes here, we have good players, but no direction. We should have won today. I really thought we were going to. I have no words. I feel like a lot of people feel like this at the moment about, you know, we don't know what to say right now. But do you think that if a new manager did come in tomorrow, Phil, do you think that they're going to get more out of this team? Because as Deb says, we do have some good players. We do have good players that should have beaten a very, very poor West Ham side. I think we've lost Phil, actually. Yes, I think that's where we're going to end the fan show. I think Phil's having a couple of connection problems. So I'm going to end the fan show there. I've received so many emails today for people wanting to come on the next fan show. So I do look forward to talking to you in the near future. Actually, Phil's come back. Phil? Phil, are you back with us? No. Okay. It's been one of them days. I tell you what, it has been another depressing show. I don't know what to say. Of course, we've got another game on Tuesday, Dortmund at home in the Champions League, followed by Burnley away next weekend. All I would say is thank you so much to everybody for coming on. Thanks so much for everyone listening and watching this fan show. These fan shows are for you fans to come on and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So if you do want to appear on one of these in a after a future match or a preview or whatever, just email me, tottenhamfanchris@gmail.com, and I look forward to talking to you in the near future. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and come on, you Spurs.